In the quiet, tree-lined streets of Arlington, Virginia, where the hum of suburban life blended with the distant buzz of military bases, Sarah Thompson stood in my cozy kitchen, 3 months pregnant, stirring a pot of soup. The scent of rosemary and chicken filled the air, a comforting ritual in a home I'd built with love. At 28, I was a devoted wife to Captain Michael Thompson, a rising star in the U.S. Army stationed at Fort Myer. Our story began in high school, where Michael's easy smile and quarterback swagger won my heart. We were the classic American sweethearts, prom dates, late-night milkshake runs at the local diner, and dreams of a white picket fence. I believed in us and him with every fiber of my being. But that morning, as sunlight streamed through the window, Michael shattered my world with a single sentence. "Sarah, I need a divorce," he said, his voice steady but his eyes avoiding mine. He stood in his crisp uniform, hands clasped behind his back as if delivering a briefing. "It's not about us. It's about Emma, David's widow. She's pregnant alone, and I have to take care of her." Emma Wilson, my late brother-in-law David's wife, was a name that carried weight in our family. David, Michael's younger brother, had died in a car accident 6 months ago, leaving Emma a grieving widow, or so she claimed. Now she was pregnant, and Michael wanted to bring her to his next posting in Fort Bragg to support her and her unborn child. My heart pounded, a mix of shock and betrayal. "A divorce," I whispered, my hand trembling on the ladle. "Why?" "It's temporary," Michael insisted, stepping closer, his voice softening. "Just until Emma's baby is born and she's settled. Then I'll come back and we'll remarry. I promise, Sarah. It's the right thing to do." In that moment, memories of my past life flooded back, not as vague feelings, but as vivid, wrenching scenes gifted to me in a dream the night before. It was no ordinary dream. As I'd slept, a radiant figure, cloaked in light, appeared to me, her voice like a whisper from the heavens. "Sarah," she said, "you've been given a second chance. See your past and choose wisely." In that vision, I relived my first life, a naive, trusting Sarah, who clung to Michael's promises, refusing his divorce request. That refusal led to a downward spiral. Emma, pregnant and desperate, went to a shady clinic for an abortion, hemorrhaged, and died with her baby. Michael, consumed by grief and rage, blamed me. At 6 months pregnant, he framed me for infidelity, catching me with a local thug, Jake Miller, in a setup that ruined my reputation. Disgraced, I was sent to a brutal labor camp where at 8 months pregnant, exhaustion triggered early labor. My baby and I died in agony alone on a cold floor. The pain of that moment lingered in my soul, sharp as a blade. But this time I was awake. The divine vision had shown me Michael's true heart. He loved Emma, not me. His promise of remarriage was a lie to keep me compliant while he played hero to his mistress. I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy I'd loved, but saw only calculation. My pregnancy, our shared dreams, meant nothing to him. The realization stung a deep ache in my chest, but I swallowed it. I wouldn't repeat my past mistakes. This time, I'd protect myself and my future. "I agree," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Michael's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Let's get the divorce papers done today. But on one condition, $500 for child support." He blinked, clearly expecting a fight, tears, or pleas. I'd begged him to stay in my past life, my love closing my eyes to his deceit. Not now. The heavenly vision had stripped away my illusions, showing me the path to survival. Michael nodded quickly, almost too eagerly. "Deal," he said, pulling out his wallet. "I'll get the money." As he turned to leave, I felt a pang of grief for the life I'd imagined, a family, a home filled with laughter. But I pushed it aside. This was my second chance, and I'd seize it. For those watching this story unfold, it's just the beginning of a journey through betrayal and redemption. If you're as gripped as I was living it, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to join me in uncovering every twist, because trust me, it gets wilder from here. We drove silently to the Arlington County Courthouse, the weight of our unraveling marriage heavy in the air. The clerk's office smelled of stale coffee and paper, a stark contrast to the warmth of our home. As we waited, I glanced at Michael, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming on the counter. He thought he was in control, that I was still the trusting girl who'd fallen for his high school charm. But I wasn't. The divine vision had given me clarity, and I'd use it to outsmart him. When the clerk handed us the forms, I signed without hesitation, my signature bold and final. Michael's relief was palpable, his shoulders relaxing as if a burden had lifted. "Sarah, don't worry," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. This is just temporary. I'll take care of Emma and her baby, and then we'll be back together. I forced a small smile, hiding the storm of emotions inside. The vision had shown me his affair with Emma, how he'd schemed to protect her while discarding me. In my past life, I believed his lies, clinging to a love that never existed. Now I saw through him. Sure, Michael, I said, my tone neutral. Let's get this over with. As we left the courthouse, the divorce certificate in my hand felt like both a wound and a weapon. I was free, but at a cost. My heart ached for the dreams I'd lost, the baby I carried, and the years I'd given to a man who never truly loved me. But the vision's warning echoed, choose wisely. I would. I'd protect myself and expose Michael's lies no matter what it took. If you're rooting for me to turn the tables, smash that like button, share your predictions in the comments, and subscribe to see how I make them pay. The road ahead is full of surprises, and I'm just starting. The Virginia sun hung low as I stepped out of the Arlington County Courthouse, the divorce certificate clutched tightly in my hand. Its edges dug into my palm, a tangible reminder of the life I'd just severed. Michael walked beside me, his army boots clicking on the pavement, his face a mask of relief he didn't bother to hide. Sarah, don't worry, he said, his voice softer now, almost patronizing. This is just temporary. Once Emma's settled with her baby, I'll come back. We'll remarry, start fresh. His words were like a script, rehearsed and hollow. I remembered our early days, how we'd met at a high school football game, me cheering in the stands, him tossing me a wink after a touchdown. We'd spent summers at the lake planning a future with kids and a dog, laughing over burnt marshmallows. I'd thought his ambition, his drive to climb the army ranks, was for us. But the divine vision from last night, a radiant figure showing me my past life's betrayal, revealed the truth. Michael loved Emma, not me. He'd been her lover even before David's death, and this divorce was his ticket to her, not a noble sacrifice. The memory of my past life's end, dying in a labor camp, my baby lost, burned in my chest. I wouldn't let him fool me again. I glanced at him, his hazel eyes scanning the parking lot, probably for Emma. Sure, Michael, I said, keeping my voice calm, though my heart raced with anger and grief. I trust you'll do what's right. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. I needed him to believe I was still the naive Sarah, unquestioningly in love, so that I could plan my next move. We reached his Jeep, where Emma waited, leaning against the hood. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, and her hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, a calculated pose. She was beautiful, with sharp green eyes and a smile that could charm anyone, a skill she'd honed long before marrying David. In my past life, I'd lived with her for months, watching her flirt with neighbors and sneak men into the house when David was away. I'd warned Michael her baby might not be David's, but he'd called me jealous, accusing me of slandering a grieving widow. Now I knew better. Emma was a manipulator, and Michael was her willing pawn. Sarah, Emma said, her voice dripping with false concern. You okay? Her eyes flicked to Michael, a smug glint betraying her act. Before I could respond, she winced, clutching her stomach. Oh, it hurts, she moaned, doubling over just enough to look convincing. Michael's face shifted to panic, his attention snapping to her. Emma, what's wrong? He rushed to her side, his hand steadying her as if I didn't exist. She clung to his arm, her lips curling into a subtle, triumphant smile meant only for me. It was a declaration, I have him, and you don't. I'd missed these signs in my past life, too heartbroken to see the truth. I'd fought the divorce, begged Michael to stay, believing his promises. That blindness led to my ruin, framed for cheating, shunned and dead. The vision showed me everything, Michael's affair with Emma and his plan to elevate her status even at the cost of our child. As Emma played her part, I felt a cold resolve settle over me. My love for Michael was gone, replaced by a burning need to protect myself and expose them both. I turned away, gripping the divorce certificate tighter, its weight grounding me. I said, take care of her, Michael, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I strode toward my car, ignoring his calls to wait. The vision's warning echoed, choose wisely. I would. I'd let Michael think I was still his trusting wife, but I was already planning. Emma's smugness, Michael's lies, they'd unravel soon enough. As I drove home, the familiar streets of Arlington felt foreign, like a stage for a play I no longer belonged in. My small house, once filled with dreams of a family, now felt like a battleground. I parked and sat in the car, my hands trembling on the wheel. The divine vision had given me a second chance, but it came with a price. I was pregnant, carrying a child tied to a man who'd betrayed me. The thought of raising Michael's baby in this web of lies twisted my stomach. I loved the idea of motherhood. I had dreamed of it since we married, but could I bring a child into this chaos? The vision showed me dying with my baby. Could I risk that again? Tears pricked my eyes, but I wiped them away. I'd grieve later. For now, I needed to be sharp to outsmart the man who'd destroyed me once. Inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, the divorce certificate still in my hand. The house was quiet, but my mind raced. Michael thought he'd won, that I'd wait patiently for his return. Emma thought she'd secured her place in his heart. They were wrong. The vision had given me knowledge, every lie, every scheme. I'd use it to tear their world apart, just as they'd done to mine. My heart ached for the girl I'd been who believed in love. But Sarah was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who'd fight and win. I folded the certificate and tucked it into a drawer, symbolizing my first step toward freedom. The game was on, and I was ready to play. The drive back to my Arlington home felt like a descent into a battlefield. The divorce certificate now tucked in my purse was both a wound and a weapon, a reminder of the life I'd lost and the fight I'd begun. The quiet streets lined with neat lawns and American flags mocked the chaos in my heart. My house, a modest 2-bedroom with a wraparound porch, had once been my sanctuary, where Michael and I planned our future over late-night coffee, dreaming of a nursery for our child. It was a stage for betrayal, and I was no longer the naive girl who'd believed in those dreams. The divine vision from the night before, a radiant figure revealing my past life's tragedy, had stripped away my illusions. I saw Michael's affair with Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law, and the schemes that led to my ruin. That vision, a gift from some higher power, was my guide, now urging me to rewrite my fate. Inside, I locked the door and sank onto the couch, the weight of my pregnancy pressing against me. At 3 months, my belly was starting to show a quiet promise of life amid the wreckage. But the vision haunted me. In my past life, I'd carried my baby to 8 months only to lose her in a brutal labor camp betrayed by Michael's lies. The memory of that loss, her tiny still form, clawed at my chest. I pressed a hand to my stomach, whispering an apology to the child I carried now. "I don't know if I can keep you safe," I murmured, tears slipping down my cheeks. Michael's betrayal made the idea of raising his child feel like a trap, tying me to a man who'd discarded me for Emma. Yet the thought of letting go hurts just as much. I wiped my eyes, forcing myself to focus. Grief could wait, survival couldn't. To outsmart Michael, I needed to understand his accomplice, Emma Wilson. In my past life, I'd lived with her for 6 months after she married David, Michael's younger brother. She was a chameleon, her beauty a weapon she wielded with precision. With her auburn hair, sharp green eyes, and a laugh that drew people in, she played the grieving widow perfectly after David's car accident. But I'd seen her true face. When David was on night shifts at the factory, Emma would sneak men into their apartment, neighbors, co-workers, even a local troublemaker named Jake Miller. I'd caught her once slipping out at midnight, her lipstick smudged, giggling with a stranger in the alley. When I confronted her, she'd laughed it off, calling me uptight. I told Michael, hoping he'd see her for what she was, but he accused me of jealousy, defending her honor. Now I knew why he was one of her lovers, blind to her web of deceit. Emma's pregnancy was the key to her hold over Michael. She claimed the baby was David's, conceived before his death, but the timeline was shaky. David had been gone 6 months, and her belly suggested a later conception. In my past life, I'd warned Michael the child might belong to someone else, maybe Jake or another suitor. He'd raged at me, calling my suspicions baseless. The vision revealed the truth. Michael believed the baby was his, a delusion Emma fed to secure his loyalty. She was a master manipulator, using her charm to juggle multiple men, each thinking they were her one and only. I'd been blind to her game before, too. Trusting, too eager to see her as family. Not anymore. I stood pacing the living room, my mind racing. The vision had shown me how Emma's death in my past life, hemorrhaging after a botched abortion, fueled Michael's hatred, leading him to frame me for infidelity with Jake. That setup cost me everything: my reputation, freedom, and child. This time I'd use Emma's own tactics against her. If I could expose her affairs, I could turn Michael and her other lovers against each other, unraveling their alliance. The thought sparked hope, a plan forming like a map in the dark. I'd let Michael think I was still the compliant Sarah, heartbroken but obedient, while I gathered the pieces to destroy them. Outside the neighborhood was quiet kids riding bikes under the late afternoon sun. I envied their innocence, a world untouched by betrayal. I thought of Michael now, likely with Emma planning their future while I stood alone. The pain of his deceit cut deep, but the vision's warning echoed, "Choose wisely." I would. Emma's true colors, her lies, her affairs were my leverage. I'd start with Jake Miller, a volatile piece on this chessboard. If I could plant doubt in his mind, make him question Emma's loyalty, the cracks would spread. I sat at the kitchen table, sketching my next move. The divorce certificate was a silent reminder of my resolve. This wasn't just about survival, it was about justice. The Arlington evening settled over my house like a heavy curtain, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and distant barbecues. I stood on my porch, the divorce certificate now hidden in a locked drawer, symbolizing my first victory. The divine vision from 2 nights ago still burned in my mind, a radiant figure showing me my past life's downfall, urging me to rewrite my story. I'd been a fool in that life, clinging to Michael Thompson, my Army captain ex-husband, as he betrayed me with Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law. I'd lost everything: my reputation, my freedom, my unborn child. Now at 28 and 3 months pregnant, I was determined to turn their lies against them. The vision had given me clarity, and I'd use it to dismantle their world. As I leaned against the porch railing, a familiar figure caught my eye. Jake Miller, a local thug with a rap sheet and a swagger lurking near my mailbox. His leather jacket and crooked grin were unmistakable. In my past life, Jake was Emma's accomplice, sneaking into our house to frame me for infidelity, a plot that led to my disgrace. The vision showed me his role. He'd believed Emma's baby was his only to turn on me when she died after a botched abortion. Seeing him skulk around my property, I felt a surge of opportunity. Jake was a loose cannon, and I'd light his fuse. "Hey, Jake," I called, stepping off the porch with a calculated smile. He turned, his eyes narrowing, lighting up as he recognized me. "Sarah, right? What's up?" His voice was casual, but his gaze darted to my house, suspicious. I held the divorce certificate, letting it catch the streetlight's glow. "Just got back from the courthouse. Michael and I are done." I paused, watching his reaction. Jake's eyebrows shot up, a grin spreading across his face. He thought he'd won, that Emma was free to be his. "Perfect. Divorced, huh?" he said, stepping closer. "Guess Michael's got his hands full with Emma now. Her kid's gonna need a daddy." His tone was smug, but I caught the flicker of possessiveness in his eyes. I leaned in, lowering my voice like I was sharing a secret. "Yeah, about that. Michael thinks the baby's his. Says he's been with Emma for months, even before David died. But you know Emma, she's got a whole roster. Tom is from the factory, Kevin is from the bar, and maybe even Lucas is from the auto shop. Who knows who the father really is?" Jake's grin vanished, his face paling as if I'd slapped him. "What the hell are you talking about?" he growled, his hands clenching into fists. "Emma's with me. That kid's mine." I shrugged, keeping my expression neutral despite the thrill of his reaction. "Believe what you want, Jake. But I lived with her. I saw her sneaking guys in night after night. She's playing all of you, Michael included. Ask her yourself." I turned, walking back to my porch, leaving him stewing in the dark. Jake's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with doubt and rage. "You're lying," he spat, but his voice wavered. He stormed off, his boots thudding against the pavement, heading toward Emma's apartment across town. I watched him go, a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. The vision showed me Jake's devotion to Emma and his belief in her lies about their future. Now I'd planted a seed of betrayal that would grow into chaos. If Jake confronted Emma, or better Michael, their fragile alliance would crack. Back inside, I locked the door and sank into a chair, my hand resting on my belly. The weight of my pregnancy felt heavier now, a constant reminder of the choice I faced. In my past life, Michael's betrayal led to my child's death in a labor camp, a pain that still echoes in my dreams. I wanted to be a mother, to hold a child who'd know love, not lies. But this baby tied me to Michael, a man who'd discarded me without a second thought. The vision's warning, "Choose wisely," rang in my ears. I couldn't keep this child, not in this web of deceit. The thought tore at me, a fresh wound, but I'd decided. Tomorrow I'd take the steps to end the pregnancy, protecting myself from a future tied to betrayal. For now, I needed to focus on my plan. I pulled out a notebook, jotting down names: Michael, Emma, Jake. Each was a piece in this game, and I'd move them carefully. Emma's promiscuity was my weapon, but I needed more proof, leverage, a way to expose them publicly. Michael's military career was his pride. Tarnishing it would hit him hardest. Emma's hold over him relied on her lies about the baby. If I could push Jake to act to demand answers, the truth would surface and their house of cards would collapse. I closed the notebook, my resolve hardening. The vision had given me a second chance and I wouldn't waste it. Jake's anger was just the beginning. Soon, Michael and Emma would face the consequences of their betrayal and I'd be the one to deliver them. The Arlington night was quiet. The only sound was the soft chirping of crickets outside my window. Inside my small two-bedroom house, the air felt heavy, thick with the weight of choices I never thought I'd face. I sat on the edge of my bed, the divorce certificate from Michael Thompson, my now ex-husband, tucked away in a drawer like a scar I couldn't bear to look at. The divine vision from 3 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's tragedy, still burned in my mind. It had shown me the betrayal of Michael, a U.S. Army captain, and his lover, Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law. In that life, my blind trust in Michael led to ruin, framed for infidelity, sent to a brutal labor camp, and dying with my unborn child at 8 months pregnant. Now at 28 and 3 months pregnant with Michael's child, I faced a choice that tore at my soul. The vision's warning, "Choose wisely," echoed, urging me to protect myself no matter the cost. I rested a hand on my belly, feeling the faint curve where life grew. I dreamed of motherhood in my past life, picturing a child with Michael's hazel eyes running through our backyard. Those dreams were built on love, on the high school sweetheart who'd promised me forever at our lakeside wedding. But the vision revealed his true heart. He loved Emma, not me, and his lies led to our child's death. The memory of that loss, her tiny, lifeless body in a cold camp, haunted me, a grief so raw it stole my breath. I whispered to my unborn child, "I wanted you, but I can't keep you in this world of lies." Tears streamed down my face, each one a mourning for the future I'd lost. Keeping this baby meant tying myself to Michael, a man who'd discarded me for Emma. The risk was too significant. The vision showed me dying because of his cruelty. I couldn't let history repeat. Wiping my eyes, I stood and crossed to my dresser, pulling out a small bottle of abortion pills I'd obtained from a discreet clinic the day before. My hands trembled as I held them, the weight of the decision crushing me. I'd always imagined myself as a mother singing lullabies, teaching a child to ride a bike. But this child, Michael's child, carried the shadow of his betrayal. If I kept it, I'd be bound to him, vulnerable to his schemes. The vision had shown me his ruthlessness, how he'd framed me with Jake Miller, a local thug, to justify abandoning me. I couldn't let that happen again. Swallowing hard, I took the pills with a glass of water, each gulp a step toward freedom and a stab of guilt. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "This is the only way." The act was done, but the emotional toll lingered. I curled up on the bed, clutching a pillow, letting the tears come. The vision had given me strength, but couldn't erase the pain of letting go. I mourned the child I'd never hold, the life I'd dreamed of. But I also felt a spark of resolve. As heartbreaking as it was, this choice was mine, a reclaiming of my power. Michael and Emma thought they could control me, use me as a pawn in their twisted game. They were wrong. The vision had shown me their lies. Michael's affair with Emma, her manipulation of multiple men, including Jake, whom I'd already set against her. My plan was in motion, and this sacrifice was part of it. To protect myself, I needed to prepare for what came next. I opened my trunk, pulling out every dollar I'd saved from my part-time job at a local bookstore, $700 in crumpled bills. In my past life, I'd given everything to Michael's family, funding his mother Margaret's endless demands while he sent his salary to Emma. Now I'd guard my resources. I sat at the kitchen table, stitching the cash into the lining of my winter coat, each stitch a promise of independence. The vision had shown me the brutality of Michael's mother Margaret, who'd treated me like a servant, and Emma's smug confidence as she stole Michael's heart. They'd underestimated me, but I was no longer the naive Sarah who'd begged for love. I was a woman reborn, armed with knowledge and ready to fight. As I finished sewing, I glanced at the clock, midnight. The house was silent, but my mind buzzed with plans. Jake Miller, provoked by my revelation about Emma's affairs, was likely confronting her now, sowing discord among my enemies. But I needed more than chaos. I needed to expose Michael and Emma publicly to ruin their carefully crafted facades. Michael's military career was his pride, and Emma's hold over him relied on her lies about her baby's paternity. If I could push their secrets into the open, their world would collapse. I tucked the coat away, my heart heavy but resolute. The vision's gift was clear. I had a second chance, and I'd use it to reclaim my life, no matter how much it hurt. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of my Arlington home, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. I stood in the kitchen brewing coffee, the bitter aroma grounding me after a sleepless night. The abortion pills had done their work, leaving a dull ache in my body and a heavier one in my heart. The divine vision from 3 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, still guided me, its warning clear. Choose wisely. I'd been a fool in that life, trusting Michael Thompson, my Army captain ex-husband, until his schemes with Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law, destroyed me. I died in a labor camp, my unborn child lost, framed for infidelity by Michael and his accomplice Jake Miller. Now at 28, I was free of Michael's ring and his lies, the divorce certificate, a testament to my first victory. But freedom came with a cost, and the grief of my choice to end my pregnancy lingered like a bruise. I sipped my coffee, staring out the window at the quiet neighborhood. Kids rode scooters on the sidewalk, their laughter starkly contrasting to the storm inside me. The vision had shown me Michael's true face, a man who loved Emma, not me, and who'd sacrificed our future for her. It also revealed his mother, Margaret Thompson, who'd treated me like a servant since our wedding day. In my past life, I'd slaved for her, buying groceries and paying her bills while Michael funneled his salary to Emma. I'd thought it was his duty to his family. Now I knew it was neglected dismissal of my worth. The memory of Margaret's sneering demand, "Sarah, you're not good enough for my son," fueled my resolve. They'd all underestimated me, but I was done playing their game. The front door creaked open and Michael stepped inside, his army uniform crisp, but his eyes tired. Behind him, Emma followed, her auburn hair pulled back, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, with a practiced air of fragility. She clung to his arm, her green eyes flicking to me with a smug glint. "Sarah," Michael said, his voice overly gentle. "Emma's staying here for a bit. She needs support." I raised an eyebrow, keeping my expression neutral. "Sure," I said, setting my mug down. "She's family." The words were a jab, a reminder of their betrayal. In my past life, I'd welcomed Emma into our home, treating her like a sister, only to learn she'd been sleeping with Michael behind me. The vision showed me their affair, how they'd mocked my trust. I'd let them think I was still naive, biding my time. Emma's lips curved into a faint smile, but the door swung open again before she could speak. Margaret stormed in, her gray hair disheveled, her eyes narrowing at me. "Sarah, I need $500, she barked. "Medical bills. The hospital won't wait." Her tone was sharp, as if I owed her my existence. I'd emptied my savings for her in my past life, believing it was my duty as Michael's wife. She'd never thanked me, only criticized. "You're too plain, Sarah. No wonder Michael's distracted." I crossed my arms, meeting her glare. "I don't have $500, Margaret. Ask your son. Or maybe Emma. She's the new favorite, isn't she?" My voice was calm but edged with steel. Margaret's face reddened, her mouth opening to snap back, but I cut her off. "We're divorced now, Margaret. I don't owe you anything." I pulled the divorce certificate from the drawer, holding it up like a shield. "This house is mine, left by my parents. You've got no claim here." Margaret sputtered, her hands clenching. "You ungrateful little, how dare you!" She stepped forward, but I held my ground, my heart pounding. In my past life, I'd cowered under her insults, desperate for approval. Not anymore. The vision showed me her role in Michael's schemes and how she'd helped frame me to protect her son's reputation. Emma watched her smile, faltering, while Michael shifted uncomfortably, caught between his mother and lover. "Enough, Mom," Michael said, his voice low. "Sarah's right. We'll figure it out." He glanced at me, his eyes searching for the old Sarah who'd bend to their demands. But I was different now, hardened by betrayal and guided by the vision's truth. I turned away, busying myself with the dishes, but my ears were sharp, listening for their next move. As they retreated to the living room, Emma's soft giggles and Michael's murmurs floated back, a blatant display of their affair. Margaret's voice joined in, sharp and conspiratorial. I crept closer, hiding behind the hallway wall, catching fragments of their conversation. "Sarah's too quiet," Margaret hissed. "She's up to something." Michael's tone was dismissive. "She's harmless. Just keep her in line until Emma's settled." Emma chimed in, her voice smug. "She'll do whatever you say, Michael. She always has." My blood boiled, but I stayed silent, my mind racing. They thought they could control me, use me as a pawn while they played house. The vision had warned me of their ruthlessness, how they'd drugged me in my past life, staging an affair with Jake to ruin me. They'd try it again, I was sure, but this time I'd be ready. I slipped back to the kitchen, my resolve hardening. I'd sown discord with Jake yesterday, planting doubts about Emma's loyalty. Now I needed to prepare for their next attack, to turn their schemes against them. The vision's gift was my weapon, and I'd wield it precisely. Michael, Emma, and Margaret would learn soon enough that I wasn't their victim. The Arlington dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting long shadows across my modest home. I stood in the kitchen, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary, the metallic clank echoing my churning thoughts. The abortion pills I'd taken the night before left a lingering ache in my body, a quiet reminder of the sacrifice I'd made to break free from Michael Thompson, my ex-husband. The divine vision from 4 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, still guided me, its warning sharp. Choose wisely. In that life, I'd been a fool, trusting Michael, a U.S. Army captain, until his affair with Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law, and their schemes destroyed me. Framed for infidelity, sent to a labor camp, I'd died with my unborn child. Now at 28, divorced and unburdened by pregnancy, I was rewriting my fate, armed with the vision's truth. The house, once a haven of dreams with Michael, felt like a chessboard now. I'd sown discord with Jake Miller, a local thug, and Emma's lover by revealing her affairs, planting seeds of doubt that would fracture their alliance. But I knew Michael, Emma, and his mother Margaret wouldn't stop there. In my past life, they'd drugged me with a sedative, staging an affair with Jake to ruin my reputation. The memory of that betrayal, waking in a stranger's arms, neighbors gawking, Michael's cold accusations stoked my resolve. They'd try it again, but I'd be ready this time. As I dried the pot, voices drifted from the living room. Michael, Emma, and Margaret were huddled there, their tones low but urgent. I set the pot down quietly, my heart pounding, and crept to the hallway, pressing myself against the wall near the living room door. The vision had taught me to listen, to anticipate their moves. Margaret's raspy voice cut through first. "Sarah's too calm," she hissed. "She's not the pushover she used to be. That divorce certificate's made her bold. She's still harmless." Michael said, his voice dismissive but edged with unease. "She signed the papers, didn't she?" "She'll keep quiet if we handle this right." Emma's laugh was sharp smug. "Handle it. She's already asking questions about me. Jake came by last night furious, saying I'm playing him with other guys. She's stirring things up, Michael." My lips twitched a flicker of satisfaction. My words to Jake had hit their mark, setting him against Emma. But Michael's following words chilled me. "Then we stop her," he said, his tone cold. "We can't let her ruin this. I've got a sedative strong enough to knock her out for hours. We get Jake to slip into her room tonight, stage it like she's cheating. The neighbors will eat it up and she'll be disgraced. No one will believe her over us." Margaret chuckled a cruel sound. "Perfect. She'll lose everything, her house, her name, and you'll be free to take Emma to Fort Bragg, no questions asked." Emma's voice was eager. "Do it tonight, Michael. I've got Jake primed, he thinks I'm his. He'll do whatever I say. We'll make sure Sarah's finished." I froze, my breath catching. The vision had warned me of this exact plan, but hearing it laid bare sent a shiver down my spine. In my past life, I'd woken to Jake beside me, Michael leading a crowd to witness my shame. The humiliation had broken me, paving the way for my exile to the labor camp. My hand clenched the wall nails, digging into the paint. They thought they could repeat history, but I wasn't that Sarah anymore. The vision had given me a second chance, and I'd turned their trap against them. I slipped back to the kitchen, my mind racing. The sedative Michael mentioned was likely in his study where he kept his military gear. I needed to find, replace, and use their scheme to expose them instead. My heart ached for the girl I'd been, the one who'd loved Michael unquestioningly, believing his high school promises of forever. That girl was gone, replaced by someone sharper, forged in betrayal. I glanced at the clock, 6 p.m. I had hours to prepare to outsmart them. Jake was already rattled thanks to my words about Emma's affairs. If I could manipulate their plan, I'd make them pay publicly, painfully. I moved to the study, careful to avoid creaking floorboards. Michael's desk was cluttered with papers and a locked box where he kept sensitive items. I'd seen him open it once using a key hidden in a drawer. My fingers found the key, and the box clicked open, revealing a small vial labeled midazolam, a sedative, just as he'd said, capable of inducing deep sleep. I pocketed it, replacing it with a vial of sugar syrup I'd prepared earlier, its color close enough to pass. My plan was forming. I'd let Michael think I'd taken the sedative, but I'd use it against Emma, turning their staged affair into their own downfall. The vision's clarity was my guide, and I'd wield it like a blade. The Arlington night was thick with tension, the air heavy with the scent of impending rain. Inside my house, I moved with purpose, the vial of midazolam, Michael's sedative, hidden in my pocket. The divine vision from 4 nights ago, a radiant figure unveiling my past life's betrayal, pulsed in my mind, its warning precise. Choose wisely. In that life, I'd been destroyed by Michael Thompson, my army captain ex-husband and his lover, Emma Wilson, who was framed for infidelity and died in a labor camp with my unborn child. Now at 28, divorced and free of the pregnancy I'd ended to protect myself, I was ready to turn their schemes against them. The vision had given me a second chance, and I'd use it to expose their lies. Earlier, I'd overheard Michael, Emma, and his mother, Margaret, plotting to drug me with the sedative and stage an affair with Jake Miller, a local thug, to ruin my reputation. In my past life, their plan succeeded, leaving me disgraced. This time, I'd rewritten the script. I'd swapped the sedative for sugar syrup in Michael's study, ensuring their plan would fail. But I needed a way to trap them in their own deceit. Emma's nightly ritual of powdered milk, a habit Michael indulged to pamper her pregnancy, was my opportunity. The vision showed me their arrogance and how they underestimated me. I'd use that to my advantage. In the kitchen, I opened the pantry, finding the can of powdered milk Emma used. My hands were steady as I poured a small amount into a bowl, then mixed in the midazolam, carefully dissolving it completely. The sedative, meant to knock me out, would instead affect Emma, amplifying her recklessness. I knew Michael visited her room nightly, their affair barely concealed. If the drug loosened Emma's inhibitions, it could push them into a compromising position, one I could expose. I replaced the tainted milk in the can, wiping my hands clean, my heart racing with anticipation. The vision's clarity guided me. Their desires would be their downfall. As I closed the pantry, the front door opened, and Michael stepped inside, holding a tray of eggnog. His face wore a forced smile, his hazel eyes scanning me for weakness. "Sarah, I made this for you," he said, his voice too gentle a predator's charm. "You've had a rough day with the divorce. Drink up, relax." I recognized the setup instantly. In my past life, he'd drugged my food, leaving me unconscious for Jake's staged scene. The eggnog was likely laced with what he thought was the sedative. I took the glass, meeting his gaze. "Thanks, Michael," I said, my tone soft, playing the compliant ex-wife. I sipped the eggnog, tasted only sugar syrup, and confirmed my swap. His shoulders relaxed, a smug glint in his eyes. He thought he'd won. "Get some rest," he said, patting my shoulder before heading to Emma's room. I waited until his footsteps faded, then poured the rest of the eggnog down the sink. My plan required precision. I gathered a few bricks from the backyard shed, heavy enough to incapacitate. Jake was due to sneak in later part of their scheme, and I'd be ready. The vision had shown me his role, how he'd climb through my window, believing Emma's lies about their future. I'd deal with him, but first I needed Michael and Emma to fall into my trap. I moved to my bedroom, closing the door, but leaving it slightly ajar, a lure for Jake. I placed the bricks under the bed within reach and sat on the edge, listening. The house was quiet, but I heard murmurs from Emma's room, followed by her giggle. Michael was with her, as expected. The sedative in her milk would take effect soon, clouding her judgment, amplifying her impulses. If my plan worked, they'd be too distracted to notice me setting the stage. I glanced at the clock, 8 p.m. Time was ticking. Jake would arrive soon, and Margaret the schemer would be watching, ready to lead neighbors to my disgrace. I stood checking the window latch, ensuring it was loose enough for Jake to enter. My mind flashed to the vision's end, me broken and shunned Michael's lies, believed by all. Not this time. I'd let them think their plan succeeded, only to turn it against them. The tainted milk, the fake sedative, the bricks, all were pieces in my game. I sat back, my pulse steady despite the stakes. The vision had given me knowledge, and I'd wield it like a weapon. Michael and Emma were about to learn what happened when you underestimated Sarah Thompson. The Arlington night was heavy with the promise of rain, the air thick with tension as I sat on the edge of my bed, the bricks hidden beneath it, within arm's reach. My small two-bedroom house, once a haven of dreams with Michael Thompson, my ex-husband, was now a battlefield. The divine vision from 5 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, guided my every move, its warning clear: choose wisely. In that life, I'd been destroyed by Michael, a U.S. Army captain, and his lover, Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law. Framed for infidelity with Jake Miller, a local thug, I'd been sent to a labor camp, dying with my unborn child. Now, at 28, divorced and free of the pregnancy I'd ended to protect myself, I was ready to turn their schemes against them. The vision had given me a second chance, and I'd wield it like a blade. Earlier, I'd overheard Michael, Emma, and his mother Margaret plotting to drug me with midazolam, a sedative, and stage an affair with Jake to ruin my reputation. I'd swapped the sedative for sugar syrup, ensuring their plan would fail, and laced Emma's nightly powdered milk with the real drug, a potent dose that would cloud her judgment and amplify her impulses. Michael, believing he'd drugged me with the eggnog I'd sipped, was now in Emma's room, their murmurs and giggles drifting through the walls. The trap was set, and I was ready to spring it. At 9 p.m., a shadow moved outside my window, the faint scrape of boots on the gravel drive confirming Jake's arrival. The vision had shown me his role in my past life, sneaking into my room, part of Emma's scheme, believing her lies about their future together. I'd already rattled him by revealing Emma's affairs with Michael and others, planting seeds of doubt. Now he was here, thinking he'd frame me as planned. I gripped a brick, my pulse steady despite the adrenaline coursing me. The window creaked open and Jake's silhouette appeared, his leather jacket catching the moonlight. He climbed through his movements, cautious but confident, unaware I was waiting. As he stepped into the room, I swung the brick with all my strength, aiming for his temple. It connected with a sickening thud, and Jake crumpled to the floor unconscious before he could make a sound. My breath came in sharp gasps, the weight of the act settling over me. In my past life, Jake had been their accomplice, his hands on me as Michael led neighbors to witness my shame. The vision's memory fueled my rage. I swung the brick again, striking his lower body, ensuring he'd never harm another woman. The brutality shocked me, but I couldn't afford mercy. Jake was a predator, and I was done being prey. I dragged his limp form to the backyard, dumping him by the outhouse under the cover of darkness. My arms ached, but my mind was clear. The vision had shown me the cost of hesitation, my life, my child's life. I wouldn't falter now. Returning to the house, I crept to Emma's room, where the murmurs had grown louder, punctuated by laughter. The midazolam in her milk was working, loosening her inhibitions, drawing Michael deeper into her web. I gripped a rolling pin from the kitchen, its weight solid, and took a deep breath. This was the moment. I burst through Emma's door, screaming, "You lying bastard!" Michael and Emma were tangled on the bed, clothes askew, caught in the throes of the drug's effects. Michael's eyes widened, his face paling as he scrambled to cover himself. Emma, dazed but defiant, smirked, her green eyes glassy. "Sarah, what the hell?" Michael stammered, but I didn't give him a chance to recover. I swung the rolling pin, catching him across the shoulder. He yelped, tumbling off the bed, blood trickling from a cut on his arm. "You're sleeping with her!" I shouted, my voice raw with fury, channeling every ounce of pain from my past life. "You told me it was temporary, that you were helping David's widow. But you're in her bed." Michael. Emma tried to rise, but the sedative made her movements sluggish, her words slurred. I turned on her, the rolling pin raised. "And you? Emma, I treated you like a sister, and this is how you repay me." The commotion drew Margaret, who appeared in the doorway, her gray hair wild, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. She thought their plan was succeeding, that Jake was in my room, sealing my disgrace. I let my screams carry, knowing neighbors would hear. "You're both disgusting," I cried, swinging the rolling pin again, grazing Michael's leg. He curled up, shielding Emma, their entanglement, a grotesque display of their betrayal. The vision's truth burned in my mind. They'd planned to ruin me, but I'd turned their weapon against them. The Arlington night erupted into chaos as my screams echoed through the house, the rolling pin still clutched in my hand. Michael Thompson. My ex-husband and Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law, were sprawled on her bed, caught in a compromising tangle, their faces frozen in shock. The midazolam I'd slipped into Emma's milk had worked perfectly, amplifying her recklessness and drawing Michael into a display they couldn't hide. The divine vision from 5 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, guided my every move, its warning clear: choose wisely. In that life, I'd been framed for infidelity, sent to a labor camp, and died with my unborn child. Now at 28, divorced and free of the pregnancy I was rewriting my fate, exposing their lies to the world. Margaret, Michael's mother, stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with confusion. She'd expected to find me drugged in my room with Jake Miller, the thug I'd knocked out and left by the outhouse. Instead, she saw her son and Emma exposed in their betrayal. "Sarah, what's going on?" she barked, but her voice faltered as she took in the scene. I seized the moment, my voice carrying through the open windows. "They're sleeping together," I screamed, tears streaming down my face, honest and raw from years of betrayal. "Michael divorced me to be with her, and Emma's been playing us all." The noise drew neighbors, their footsteps crunching on the gravel drive. Mrs. Jenkins, a kind retiree from across the street, appeared first, followed by Mr. Larson and his wife, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. I staggered into the hallway, clutching my stomach, and collapsed dramatically, crying, "My baby." The stress, it's too much. The vision had shown me how sympathy could sway a crowd, and I played the part of the wronged wife perfectly. In truth, I'd ended the pregnancy to protect myself, but the neighbors didn't know that. They saw a pregnant woman betrayed and broken, and their murmurs turned to outrage. Realizing her plan had backfired, Margaret rushed to my room expecting to find Jake. She flung open the door, shouting, "Sarah's cheating, there's a man in here." But the room was empty, save for a stuffed suitcase I'd placed under the covers to mimic a body. Her face paled, her mouth gaping as Mrs. Jenkins and others peered in confused. "Where's the man?" Mr. Larson asked, his brow furrowed. "You said Sarah was cheating." My cries drew them back to Emma's room, where Michael and Emma were still entangled, the sedative's effects making their separation clumsy and awkward. The midazolam had induced a state of uninhibited euphoria, locking them in a compromising position that left no doubt of their affair. "Look at them," I sobbed, pointing at the bed. "Michael said he was helping his brother's widow, but he's been with her all along, and Emma David's barely gone, and she's carrying Michael's child." The crowd gasped, their whispers turning to shouts. "Disgraceful," Mrs. Jenkins cried. "His wife's pregnant, and he's with his sister-in-law." Mr. Larson shook his head. "No morals at all." And right under Sarah's nose, the vision showed me the power of public shame and how it had destroyed me in my past life. Now I wielded it against them. Michael tried to speak, his face flushed with panic, but the sedative's haze slurred Emma's words, and their attempts to disentangle only deepened their humiliation. Margaret, frantic, tried to salvage the situation. "It's not what it looks like," she shrieked, but the neighbors ignored her, their scorn focused on Michael and Emma. "They're stuck together." Someone gasped, misinterpreting their drug-induced clumsiness, like animals. The crowd swelled, more neighbors joining, drawn by the commotion. I fell to my knees, sobbing. I believed him. He said he'd remarry me, but it was all lies. My performance was convincing, fueled by the pain of my past life's betrayal. The neighbors surrounded me, offering comfort, their sympathy, a shield against Margaret's glares. As the crowd's outrage grew, I stumbled, leaning on Mrs. Jenkins. "Take me to the hospital," I whispered, clutching my stomach. "I think I'm losing the baby." It was a lie, but a necessary one. The vision had taught me to use their cruelty against them, to turn their trap into their downfall. As neighbors helped me to a car, Michael and Emma remained trapped, in their shame, the crowd's jeers ringing in their ears. My plan had worked, their affair was exposed, their reputations shattered. The vision's gift guided me, and I delivered justice with my hands. The Arlington night had erupted into chaos, the echoes of my screams still ringing in my ears as I was rushed to the hospital, neighbors' voices thick with sympathy. My carefully orchestrated collapse, feigning a miscarriage to cement my role as the wronged wife, had worked flawlessly. Michael Thompson, my ex-husband, and Emma Wilson, his widowed sister-in-law, were exposed in their sordid affair, caught in a drug-induced entanglement that shocked the neighborhood. The divine vision from 6 nights ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, had guided me to this moment, its warning clear: choose wisely. In that life, I'd been framed for infidelity, sent to a labor camp, and died with my unborn child. Now at 28, divorced and free of the pregnancy I'd ended, I'd turned their scheme against them, exposing their lies to a crowd of outraged neighbors. At the hospital, doctors performed a minor procedure to complete the miscarriage I'd induced days earlier, their faces full of pity as I played the grieving victim. Outside, the town buzzed with gossip, the scandal spreading like wildfire. Michael and Emma, still reeling from the midazolam's effects, were rushed to the ER, their humiliating display witnessed by a growing mob. Neighbors whispered of their disgrace, a military officer and his brother's widow caught in a shameless act. I lay in my hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic grounding me, and allowed myself a moment of grim satisfaction. The vision had shown me their cruelty, how they'd planned to drug me and stage an affair with Jake Miller, a local thug, to ruin me. I'd outsmarted them, knocking Jake out and dumping him by the outhouse, ensuring their plan backfired. By morning, the consequences began to unfold. I slipped out of my room, overhearing nurses gossip about Michael and Emma. One said they needed a whole team to separate them, shaking her head, and the crowd outside, hundreds, followed them here. The scandal was unlike anything Arlington had seen, a spectacle that branded Michael and Emma as moral outcasts. I returned to my room, dialing the military's complaint hotline from a payphone. I reported that Captain Michael Thompson had violated military conduct, and my voice was calm but firm. He's been having an affair with his brother's widow, Emma Wilson, and planned to frame me to cover it up. The officer promised an immediate investigation, and I hung up, knowing Michael's career, his pride was finished. Back in my room, Mrs. Jenkins, my kind neighbor, visited, her face etched with concern. "Sarah, you won't believe what happened," she said, sitting beside me. "Jake Miller's family showed up at the hospital. They beat Michael senseless, broke 3 ribs, blinded 1 eye. They're saying he and Emma set Jake up." I feigned shock, my heart racing. Jake, whom I'd knocked out, had been found by his family battered and broken. They'd learned of his role in Emma's schemes, how she'd lured him to frame me, only to betray him with Michael and others. The Tuckers, Jake's roughneck clan, didn't take kindly to betrayal. "And Emma?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Mrs. Jenkins sighed. "They got to her, too. She tried to run, but they cornered her. The beating caused a hemorrhage. She lost the baby and her uterus. She'll never have kids again." I nodded, hiding my elation. Emma's lies about her baby's paternity, claiming it was David's, then Michael's, then Jake's, had unraveled, and her punishment was poetic. The vision had shown me her manipulative hold over men, which now cost her everything. Margaret, Michael's mother, faced her own reckoning. Mrs. Jenkins leaned closer. "Margaret's been shunned. Neighbors saw her leading the crowd to your room trying to frame you. They call her a liar, saying she knew about Michael and Emma. Some even threw stones at her house last night. Margaret's role in their plot, her cruel demands, her complicity, had turned the town against her. She'd treated me like a servant in my past life, sneering at my efforts to please her. Now her reputation was in tatters, her bruises a mark of her fall. I pictured her alone and despised, and felt a cold justice settle over me. As I was discharged, I knew staying in Arlington was dangerous. Michael, Emma, and Jake were cornered, and cornered dogs bite. The vision had warned me of their desperation, how Michael's rage led to my death in my past life. I returned home, ignoring Margaret's belongings scattered in the hall, and packed my own. The house left to me by my parents was mine to sell. I listed it for $3,000 and my bookstore job for $1,000, prices low enough to attract quick buyers. By evening, both were sold, the cash sewn into my coat alongside my savings. I bought a train ticket to Atlanta, a city pulsing with opportunity, and left Arlington under the cover of night, the vision's guidance urging me forward. Michael, Emma, and Margaret had lost everything. Now I'd build a life they couldn't touch. The Atlanta sun dipped below the horizon 3 years later, casting a warm glow over my bustling clothing shop on Peachtree Street. The Sarah's Threads store was my pride, a far cry from the street stall I'd started with my Arlington savings. The divine vision from 3 years ago, a radiant figure revealing my past life's betrayal, had guided me to this moment, its warning to choose wisely now, a fulfilled promise. In that life, I'd been destroyed by Michael Thompson, my ex-husband, and his lover, Emma Wilson, who was framed for infidelity and died in a labor camp with my unborn child. At 28, I'd escaped Arlington, leaving behind Michael, Emma, and his mother, Margaret, their reputations shattered by my calculated exposure of their affair. At 31, I'd rebuilt my life free of their poison. The journey to Atlanta hadn't been easy. I'd arrived with $4,000, the proceeds from selling my house and job, and faced long nights at a cramped stall in a bustling market. I'd haggled with suppliers sewn late into the night and learned the cutthroat world of retail. There were days when I barely ate, when doubt crept in, whispering that I'd never rise above my past. But the vision's clarity kept me going. Every stitch and sale was a step toward independence. Within a year, I'd saved enough to open a small shop, its racks filled with dresses I designed. Customers loved my bold patterns and word spread. By year 3, I owned 3 stores employing a dozen people, and my brand was a staple in Atlanta's fashion scene. The girl who'd fled Arlington, battered by betrayal, was now a businesswoman, her name on every storefront. One late autumn evening, as I locked up my leading shop, a familiar voice called Sarah Thompson. I turned to see Mrs. Jenkins, my kind Arlington neighbor, her face rounder but her smile unchanged. She hurried over, grabbing my hands. "It's really you. You've made it big, haven't you? You look radiant." Her warmth stirred memories of her support during that fateful night when I'd exposed Michael and Emma. I invited her to dinner at a nearby diner, grateful for a link to my past that didn't sting. Over burgers and fries, Mrs. Jenkins shared what had happened after I left Arlington. 2 weeks after my departure, Michael discharged from the hospital, tried to return to my house only to find it had been sold. His military career ruined by my report of his misconduct, he slunk back to his rural hometown with Margaret blind in 1 eye and jobless. The humiliation broke him. He turned violent, lashing out at Margaret, blaming her for their fall. Desperate, he sought out Emma, believing she owed him for his sacrifices. But Emma, barren from her injuries and scorned by the town, wanted nothing to do with him. She confessed that her baby was Jake Miller's, not Michael's or David's. She'd used Michael's status for security, discarding him when it faded. Enraged, Michael confronted Emma and Jake, who'd survived my attack but were left impotent. In a fit of fury, Michael broke into their apartment with a hunting knife, killing them both in a bloodbath that stained the town's memory. He turned himself in, and within 6 months, a court sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Mrs. Jenkins shook her head. He was a monster, Sarah. You were lucky to escape. Margaret's fate was no kinder. Shunned for her role in the scheme, she lost her home when neighbors refused to help her. She turned to begging, her once proud demeanor reduced to desperation, her bruises a testament to the town's scorn. Mrs. Jenkins sighed. She's still out there, scrounging on the streets. No one trusts a word she says. I listened, my heart steady but heavy. The vision had warned me of their desperation, how Michael's rage had killed me in my past life. Leaving Arlington had saved me from their vengeance. Now they were gone. Michael executed Emma and Jake dead, Margaret a pariah. I'd won not just by exposing them, but by building a life they couldn't touch. At the diner, I offered Mrs. Jenkins a job managing my newest store. When it closed, she'd lost her factory job, and her eyes lit up with gratitude. Sarah, you're a blessing, she said, accepting eagerly. As we parted, I stepped into the Atlanta night, the city's hum a promise of new beginnings. I'd faced betrayal, grief, and hardship, but the vision's gift had carried me through. My shops were thriving, my heart open to love again, real love, not Michael's lies. I smiled, the weight of my past finally lifted. I was free, rebuilt by my hands, ready for a future I'd earned.